What's going on, Falcon fan? This boy Rakundo coming back at you with another video. So today we're going to talk about the draft, NFL draft strategies. We're going to get into the draft for all you draft nerds out there. Kind of bear with me while I go through draft strategies and is there a perfect draft strategy out there? King's been drafting for a long time, and I just think it's kind of fascinating when you start thinking about the draft and you look at some of the history of the draft and you look at players and how they succeed and things like that, and you figure out, is there a perfect way to figure out who to actually get in the draft and make your draft successful. The interesting thing about any draft, right away you're never gonna know um, is the draft successful. So, you know, teams, analysts come out and they give draft grades like the next day of the draft, like the next following week after the draft. And, all those draft grades, if you was probably was you go back and look at those grades of some of those drafts, you probably was like that was a bad draft. Like somebody get D's, right? And then, two or three players on this team draft hit, that D grades look really bad overall. So, you know, draft grades right after the draft is never probably a good idea for analysts to get, but they doing their job, so they had to get a draft and what they think, and everybody going off projections and what they think players going to land and stuff like that. Players where teams they go to matter. Their health, how healthy they be. They have bad luck and sustain injuries and things like that. So it's a lot of factor in when you start looking at draft and things like that. But the title I want to talk about today, like I said, for you draft nerds, really just want to talk about, is there a perfect draft strategy out there, and do some teams have like the cheat code to like get good players in on the draft? Because a lot of teams, it is some teams that really draft well every year, and you can look at the teams, and those are teams that usually have success, that has sustainability. You look at a team like the Baltimore Ravens. Ozzie Newsome, probably one of the better GMs out there, draft really well. I hate to say it, the Dallas Cowboys draft really well, right? They don't know how to coach. They don't know how to get their players to get to the next level, but they have they draft really well. If you look at their drafts, they really draft well. The Seattle Seahawks over years draft well. It's a lot of teams that really have great drafts, right? Off the rip right now. Sometimes a lot of those players don't have team success, but individual success. And that's what you want when you're drafting, especially in the early rounds. You try to get all pros, you try to get future Hall of Famers and things like that. And that's how you can kind of determine, like I said, over time, was that a successful draft, right? So we talk about Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons probably one of the worst teams when we think about drafting, right? Atlanta Falcons only have three Hall of Famers, right? They got Claude Humphrey, who they drafted right a long time ago. They drafted Deion Sanders, but he didn't finish with the team. And they drafted Brett Favre. Those are the only three Hall of Famers that Atlanta Falcons have, right? So looking at that. Now they have all pros that they have drafted, right? Some of these guys may be getting Hall of Fame later, like a Julio, maybe a Matt Ryan. Jesse Tuggle, in my opinion, probably should be in the Hall of Fame, but you know, it's some all pros. So they did have all pro seasons. Matt Ryan's, Julio, they did have all pro seasons. So they're all pros. So you can say those successful guys that they have drafted, over time. But as far as Hall of Famers, you're going out projected guys, you get in the first round. The Falcons have a lot of first rounders, right? And they only have three Hall of Famers. You got to kind of think about their draft strategy, right? Like a team like I just mentioned. Dallas Cowboys got a lot of Hall of Famers, a lot of All Pros. The Baltimore Ravens, right, a lot of All Pros. So we're going to get in that today. Want to definitely hear from you guys. Give me your brain, what you're thinking about draft strategies, things like that. We're going to go over some points that I think that should be important when you trying to get in the draft. I don't think it's a perfect draft strategy, and just go off and say that right off the bat. I think it's not a exact science to it, and it's a little luck involved as well. But there are some guys that are really good at their job, and we're going to talk about that today. So guys, with that being said, if you have not already, go ahead and please subscribe to the channel. Please hit that notification bell so you know that I drop a video. Please hit the like button so I know you guys are here to talk about. Then please hit please hit that share button so people throughout the universe can come in and look at me talk about these Atlanta Falcons and this draft strategy. So first of all, we're gonna get a couple news today. We're going to talk about real quick. O.J. Simpson passed away today. The great running back from the 70s, had over 11,000 yards rushing, 61 TDs. The first guy to go over 2,000 yards rushing with only 14 games. So really dynamic. I didn't, be honest with you, never watched him play. Only thing I can really tell you about O.J. Simpson, I think everybody knows, is the whole incident back in 1995. And most people know where they were when, that whole ordeal went down. I was actually in college. I was in my freshman year in college. I can pretty much tell you everything about it. When the verdict came out, where it was, sitting in Brown Hall in Valdosta, Georgia. With everybody had their door open, listening to the verdict, right? And whether side of the fence you was on at the time, you was either happy or mad with the verdict. But that's pretty much, So I just want to say condolences to his family. I know he do have kids out there, and whatever people think about him, it is what it is. I mean, the guy is gone. He passed away. So just let his family grieve. If you believe he did it, it didn't do it, whatever, right? But just want to talk about him. We're talking about football, one of the best running backs to ever play the game. So rest in peace to O.J. Simpson. Just wanted to throw that out there today. Talk about him. The next topic is being brought back up, and I know Falcon Twitter's been blowing up about this topic. Cam Newton, kind of came out again talking about the Atlanta Falcons deciding to sign Kirk Cousins to the his contract that he had for this year, and he talked about the Atlanta Falcons could have got him, Mike Vick, Justin Fields for the same price that they paid Kirk Cousins. I mean, guys, it's old news. I mean, it really is old news. Cam Newton has the right to say what he wants to say. Cam Newton is one of the best college players to ever play. Had an outstanding. You think about what he did when he first came out of college, rookie of the year. One of the first rookies to go over 4,000 yards his rookie season. Had an MVP in this league. Took a team to the Super Bowl. Went 15-1 in the regular seasons. So you're not taking nothing away from Cam Newton. And most players that really was really good, in their time, they always going to feel the way they feel, and probably he probably to this day he still feel like he still can play and he's better than anybody feel like he could still be one of the 32 starters in the NFL. So, but just to look at Cam Newton, it's not like he was all worldly better than the Kirk Cousins. Cam Newton has 32,000 passing yards, 194 touchdowns, 123 interceptions, and you're going to add on those 5,628 rushing yards as well. So about 38,000 total yards for a quarterback, 194 touchdowns, and 123 interceptions, right? He played 11 seasons. Look at Kirk Cousins' numbers over 12 seasons. 39,471 passing yards, 270 touchdowns, 110 interceptions, and he has almost 1,000-yard rushing, 958 yard rushing. So records, win-loss record for Cam Newton is 76-71. Win-loss record for Kirk Cousins is 78-70. So like I said, guys, it's not like it's that big of a difference. For the Atlanta Falcons to get Kirk Cousins, it's about the fit for the team, the scheme that he's going to be playing in, and the consistency that had over the last 6 years or so. So that's what it's about. I don't think it's if Cam Newton would have came, that's not who they wanted. They don't think he'll fit. And like I said, I'm not gonna really harp on it too much about what Cam Newton had to say. One thing I do want to say, he keep throwing around $180 million contract. It's not $180 million contract, and he knows that it's 100 million guaranteed, right? And really 90 million. And if they pick him up that third year option, he get another 10 million guaranteed. So it's really a 2 year contract, $90 million guaranteed. So it's not 180 millions, and he knows that. But you keep throwing $180 million out there, it makes it seem like the Atlanta Falcons gave this guy 180 million fully guaranteed, and that's not the case. He only has 100 million guaranteed, and that if they pick up that 10 million in 2027. So that's the real number. I want to thought it's just 90 million guaranteed after the first 2 seasons. So technically, Atlanta Falcons want to move on after the 2025th season. They could do that. That's where they're at. They can actually do that, right? And then when Shannon talk about Lamar Jackson's, it's for the last time we're going to talk about this. Lamar Jackson was never, ever leaving Baltimore, right? All right. They put him on an exclusive tag, right? They put him on exclusive tag. That means the team can offer him a contract. All Baltimore had to do was match it, right? So let's just say the Atlanta Falcons gave Lamar Jackson a $300 million fully guaranteed contract. Baltimore probably wouldn't have matched it, right? So they would have had Lamar Jackson, but they also would have had to give up 2 first-round picks. So they would have had to pay Lamar Jackson's 300 million guaranteed, and then give away 2 first-round picks as well. He was not leaving Baltimore. So that's another, like, you have, it's context, everything you have to say. So just want to throw that out there. So when people say that, Atlanta Falcons had a chance to get Lamar Jackson, the other team had a chance too. Nobody wasn't going to do the work for Baltimore and give him a contract so they could just match it in the end, because that's what they was going to do. Nobody was willing to do that. That's why they would have put just a regular tag on him and then have to give up the first 2 first-round picks, maybe. But the fact that they gave him an exclusive tag, they were saying if we losing him, we're gonna get 2 first-round picks in return. Plus, you're gonna have to pay him a bag, and that would have handicapped any team. And in the time, the Atlanta Falcons really would be handicapped, because you guys recall they was in salary cap hell, right? So let's just pump the brakes on these false narratives. And Shannon Sharp, a guy who's 3-time Super Bowl, should know better than that to put out that. I get it. You wanted to put the narrative out there, but tell the whole story, man. Like, just really tell the whole story. And that's pretty much what I want to say about that. So it's not $180 million contract. Fully guaranteed, it's 90 million, right? If he played the whole 4 seasons, he will get that. But the guaranteed piece is 90 million guaranteed, right? And if they wanted to get away from him after the 3rd season, they'll have dead cap, just like any other team accumulate dead cap. But the fully guaranteed, what they owe him out of pocket, is 90 million. So I just wanted to throw that out. All right, let's see here. Neither one of those guys retired the Falcons, therefore they cannot be considered Falcons. Deion Sanders, Claude Humphrey retired as they went in the Hall of Fame as Falcons. So let's get that right. Brett Favre did not go in as a Falcon, but Deion Sanders did, and Claude Humphrey did. So we got 2 Hall of Famers, right? Brett Favre did not retire Falcon, but he did go in as but he was drafted by the Falcons. So you got to give him credit for drafting him at least. He say stats don't matter, the style of quarterback. Exactly. That's what I mean. It's just he didn't fit the Falcons what they wanted to do. What's going on, Carrie? What's going on? Eddie says Dion went in. No, he went in as a Falcon. Go check it. He went in as a Falcon, not as a Cowboy. He went in as a Cowboy, as a Falcon, not a Cowboy. Go look. Go check. Please go check that. He went in as a Atlanta Falcon, not as a Dallas Cowboy. So you are correct. You are incorrect by that. You didn't go in as a Cowboy. All right. Let's get into the draft strategy. I just wanted to throw that out there. Cam Newton, the whole talk about that. Wasn't going to spend a whole lot of time on that. Wasn't going to spend a whole lot of time on all that, because today I want to talk about the draft, because guys, we got 2 weeks away from the draft. It's going to be exciting. We're going to see what these teams are going to do. I think this is going to be one of the most exciting drafts, especially on the first night, because I think it's going to be a lot of trades. I think we have potential to have 4 or 5 quarterbacks go in the first round, which is crazy. And because it's a lot of quarterback needy teams. We talked about that early in the off season about these quarterback needy teams. So it's going to be exciting this year. But let's get into the draft, and we talking about finding the perfect draft strategy, right? So let's talk about history for a minute, right? So we talk about history. I just talk about some teams that draft well, right? But most time when you look at teams and you look at their drafts, and it's only like 1 or 2 guys where people consider. So like you can have 8 draft picks, right? Just say you have 8 draft picks in the draft, right? If you hit on 3 of those draft picks, most time people say that was a pretty good draft, right? That's a real low percentage, right? But at the same time, that's what you're looking at, right? So let's just go like to the 1996 draft and with the Ravens, right? They drafted Jonathan Ogden and they drafted Ray Lewis, right? A lot of people say that was a pretty good draft, right? They won Super Bowls. They won 2000. They won again in 2012, right? So 2 Super Bowls, right? Jonathan Ogden, Ray Lewis. They drafted more people in that draft, but people look at that draft and they say that was a pretty good draft, right? Those 2 guys, right? You look at the Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner draft, right? They went and got Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. They got Bobby Wagner in the 1st round. Those guys got 17 Pro Bowls together, right? 17 Pro Bowls together. People say that's a good draft. Both of those guys probably going to Hall of Fame, right? They got what, 1 Super Bowl, because they should have had 2. I keep thinking about the one they should have had, but they got 1 Super Bowl together. People saying that's a pretty good draft. Now the best draft ever, we'll talk about the best draft ever, is in 74, before I was born, 1974, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? They went out and got Lynn Swann, they got Jack Lambert, they got um Stalwart, and they got Mike Webster. They won 4 Super Bowl in 6 years, right? That's their best draft on record, right? Those 4 guys all in the Hall of Fame, but they won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. Now that's when you hitting it, right? You know, they couldn't know that was gonna happen, right? But getting those 4 guys, you know, so people saying that's the best draft ever. Look at other teams. Usually it's 2 guys that like I said, you can consider is a pretty good draft. Look at the 49er teams, right? They went and got Charles Haley, John Taylor. They got Tom Rathman. They got 7 starters in their draft when they got Charles Haley, right? So that's considered a draft. So that's when you start looking at some of these drafts from teams, and you start saying, how can we actually get players to determine the draft? Once again, it's got to be about team success, right? Or individual success, right? Because if you got a guy and he been nominated to 10 all, been all pro 10 times, um, 10 all Pro Bowls, like Aaron Donald, right? 10 seasons, 10 all pros, 10 Pro Bowls, right? That's a good draft pick, right? But who else went in that draft with Aaron Donald? We don't know. So we don't know if that was a good draft class. We know that was a good draft pick. We don't know that was a good draft class. So individual guys, that really determines how well that draft for that person. When you think about the entire draft, that's when you start thinking about draft strategies, right? So the first thing when I think about draft strategy, um, Three Dirty says, let's gonna get this comment real quick. Can we trade back and still address top defensive need? It depends, right? And that's where I'm going right now. Good question, Three Dirty. So the first thing when I think about draft strategy is, where are you in your build as a team, right? And that's where I think the biggest the starting point when you think about draft strategies, right? So we go to recent history. First of all, you go to what the Rams did, right? The Los Angeles Rams, right? They pretty much just, you know, just forgot about the draft for a couple of seasons, right? Well, let's just say the early part of the draft, they still drafted, but you know they kind of sold their first and second round picks, and they went all in because they felt like they had a team that could win Super Bowl, right? And it paid off for them. They was actually successful. They beat the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl, right? They went out and traded for Jalen Ramsey. They brought in Von Miller, right? They went and got Matthew Stafford. They went all in and they kind of did away with the draft. I mean, even the GM even made a shirt say fuck those picks, right? Because they was able to do that, right? So is that a good strategy? That's the strategy for winning, a winning strategy, not a draft strategy. That's a winning strategy. So what they decided to do was kind of forget about the future of the team and go for the right now. So that's why I say it depends on where you are in your build, right? So that's how teams have to kind of think about where they're at. So like the San Francisco 49ers, right? Been knocking on the door for a couple of years. They feel like they're close. What kind of moves they can make to get them over the top, right? Is it somebody in the draft they think can do that? Maybe, right? Or they think they're going to go all in and bring in a veteran player who already has, you know, stuff on tape. Then they know if we get this guy, like they went and got a Christian McCaffrey, right? They went in and went and got a Christian McCaffrey. They paid Debo Samuel, right? The thing that benefited for the 49ers were they was able to get Brock Purdy, as Mr. Relevant, and it paid off, right? They drafted Brock Purdy, right? They helped them with their salary cap because if you guys recall, the 49ers actually moved up to number 3, right ahead of Atlanta Falcons in the 2021 draft and picked up Trey Lance. And technically, that would get you fired because Trey Lance did not, glean success for the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, for the San Francisco 49ers, but luckily they had Brock Purdy in the wings, right? And sometimes, like I said, it's all about luck. They drafted Brock Purdy though, so somebody saw the talent there, and they thought they can be able to take Brock Purdy and make him a quarterback in the NFL, and it paid off for them. But 49ers kind of screwed up in the draft, right? They moved up, got Trey Lance, gave up all those draft picks, draft capitals, and they was willing to do that because they was all in, right? So it's where you're at in their bill. 49ers are still a relevant team, probably the best team in NFC, right? A team that everybody's looking up to, trying to beat. So still right now, they're not in hot water yet because of that, and they almost passed that, right? That's been about 3 years ago. Most of those draft picks, that they had to give away, they recoup those back over the time, and they still got a winning formula. Where they're at now, eventually they're gonna have to pay their quarterback, right? You got Brandon Ayuk already out there want big dollars. They haven't decided, what to do with him yet. He's on the franchise tag, so they already starting to feel that salary caps, pressure. And if they don't, eventually get over the hump, because when you have to pay your quarterback, you're gonna start feel the pain. Really, that's how this thing gonna start shaking out for the 49ers. So when I say where you're at in the build, that is really important for teams. So since this is Atlanta Falcons show, we talk about Atlanta Falcons, and the Atlanta Falcons are teetering on where they're at in the build, right? They still got 3 first round draft picks, 3 top 10 draft picks still in the first year of their contract. I mean, on the first deal, right? All 3 of those guys. They got Kyle Pitts, who's going into his 4th season, so they got to make a decision to pick up his 5th-year option, right? Drake London just going to his 3rd season, so they got a couple years before they have to decide to do something with Drake London, and of course Bijan just going to his 2nd season. So you like we talking about draft strategy. You see how Terry Fontenot counter staggered these young rookies up, and I'm going to talk about you know those guys in particular in just a minute when we talk about the positions, we talk about the salary cap. But you like the way they spaced out, right? That's the one good thing we think about those three guys, three top 10 picks. Um, you got them spaced out enough that you might be able to re-sign all those guys, you know. So that's really good right now for the Atlanta Falcons where they're at. So they feel like they're right there in that spot. They had to go out and pay for Kirk Cousins, right? Because they went down the road was trying to build around a young quarterback, which is a good thing. I think that's a good strategy for any team when you're doing team building. Is build around your quarterback, put pieces around him so he don't have to be Superman, and you put a great offensive line around him, good running game, right? That's what's the strategy that Arthur Smith, Terry Fontenot laid out, and it seemed like it was working, right? They had to fix the salary cap, which they did the first two seasons. This third season was a failure. That's why Arthur Smith is out the door. That's why Raheem Morris is in the door. That's what happened, right? So where the Falcons at right now in their build, they feel like they can compete, right? That's why they went and got Kirk Cousins, right? So when you think about their draft strategy this year, what should be their move, right? So Three Dirty asked about the moving back, right? So do the Atlanta Falcons need to create more draft capital because where they're at in the bill, right? That's the question, right? So when you're thinking about that, um, you know, chalk right now, if you go look at most mock drafts, most people got Atlanta Falcons taking Dallas Turner, right? And that's chalk, right? Because most people feel like the Atlanta Falcons need a pass rusher. Three Dirty, it seems like you feel like the Atlanta Falcons need a pass rusher too, right? They do need a pass rusher. They need to have somebody that can rush the passer. A guy like Dallas Turner, has a high ceiling, right? If you look at all the measurables that he got, the pedigree coming from Alabama, ran a 4.40, long arms, quick get off, um, had over double digit sacks in Alabama his last season. Just skills, his with his testing, right? His athletic score was almost 10, right? So everything checked the box for as the potential that a guy like Dallas Turner can have, right? Um, but it's going to be the fit, right? Does he fit with the Atlanta Falcons scheme, which I believe he do because it's a 3-4 scheme, right? But his ceiling is really high, right? And that's when it comes to drafting these guys, it's projections anyway, right? It's no guarantee that any of these guys are going to pan out. That's why it's a crapshoot with this draft. That's why most teams miss out on quarterbacks, right? This just that's to be honest, right? I don't know if you guys seen that graphic out there, and over the last 30 some seasons, or however many seasons it been, on like four quarterbacks, you know, that's like all pros, which is ridiculous. It's amazing how many quarterbacks come out every year, and how wrong a lot of teams are on quarterbacks, or they get in the wrong situations. It just don't pan out, right? Their college game don't translate to the NFL game, right? So, but with Dallas Turner, his ceiling is up here. So the question is, do you get a guy with a high ceiling, right, or do you get a guy that is ready to go? A guy like Leatu Latu, right? A guy from UCLA who a lot of people saying probably the most polished pass rusher they've seen in a couple of years coming out. So do they go that route, right? So do they go with the guy that had the high ceiling, or do they go the guy that a lot of people thinking is polished, already got multiple pass rush moves, can come out, but his ceiling's not that high, right? Because they think, once offensive tackles starting to figure him out, um, he does not have that ceiling where a guy like Dallas Turner do, um, and he might not get to where we think Dallas Turner gonna get, right? But that's based off where the team's at right now. So the Atlanta Falcons was a young team, and they really felt like they're not close to competing right now. They want to just get young talent and do that. a guy like Dallas Turner might make sense more. But if they feel like I'm a coach, I can work with Dallas Turner, polish up his rush moves because his ceiling so high. We're going to bring him in right now, and we think he's going to be able to contribute right away. Right, that's the decision they got to make. Or do they take the guy that's kind of in a tweener in Jared Verse, right, from Florida State, bring that guy in who's is powerful, really powerful guy, right? We know he's going to be able to set the edge. We know he's going to be able to set that bull rush. The problem is, do he have anything else, right? In the toolbox to be able to get after the passer, right? That's what they're looking for Jared Burks. And does he fit the 3-4 scheme more than the 4-3? A guy that probably would be better in the 4-3 than the 3-4. So that's kind of decisions they got to make. So the first thing when I'm thinking about is the ceiling of a guy. Are you going to take a guy that's might be ready to step in and make, contributions right away? So to your point, they could definitely fall back in the draft, trade down. I think if they trade down to 14 to 15, they still be able to get one of those three pass rushers, the way the draft might be shaking out. So that's what I feel about a pass rusher. If they trade down and get more draft capital, yes, they would be able to do that. So let's see. Eddie says Brock is a fan favorite and fits Shanahan's system like he wants. You're 100% right. Brock Purdy fixed that system perfectly. But they're gonna have to pay that man in a minute because he's not even getting $1 million, man. With this new regime, they can match quickly. I will say we are 4 good player moves from being a serious deep playoff contenders. You might be right, man. You might be 100% correct with that. I mean, they just it depends on who they get and how they make it fit, right? Um, and I agree with you on that. Um, they're not drafting a DL. If they're not drafting a DL, who they drafting? If you think they're not drafting a D lineman, all right. So guys, the first thing, like I said, when you're looking at where you're at in the draft, the second thing I want to talk about when you get in the draft is the cap space. Your cap space, right? That's factors in. They can say what they want to say, right? But trust me, when teams are looking at their draft and they're looking at especially GMs, right? Coaches maybe not so much, right? Coaches want the guys, they want them here, and let the front office figure out how to pay these guys. But front offices are always thinking about their cap, right? Because you got to be able to keep your guys that you already invested in on the team as well, right? And so that's why I go to positions, right? So it's the number out there, and it's getting more and more, popular that you don't draft a running back in the top. You can find a running back anywhere. You're wasting the pick. You wasting the pick on a running back if you draft a running back in the top 10, right, or whatever, right. Right. So that's where there's a lot of people say you're wasting the pick when you draft a corner running back. Think about it, right? So, and you can understand why they say that, right? Because you can go get Pacheco, right? From like with the Chiefs they got him in later rounds, and he's dynamic. He's perfect fit for the Kansas City Chiefs. They didn't have to pay a lot of money for him, right? But guess what? They're gonna have to pay for him. They want to keep him. So at the end, it doesn't matter. They're gonna pay this man, right? But the reason why I'm saying um, positions matter, right? Like a Kyle Pitts, right? So you get a Kyle Pitts, it's a tight end, right? You get in number 4 overall, right? If he lives up to the hype, right? And we still don't know. I think he got 2 more years to prove that he can do that. He finally got a quarterback and give him the ball. We're going to see. But if Kyle Pitts can live up to the hype, the good thing about having a tight end that's all world that you can pay is where the position is and tied to the cap. And what I mean by that, tight ends salary right now at the market is not as high as a receiver's salary, right? So you got a tight end who a lot of people said could be all world, but you can get that all world talent for lesser on the cap than you would have to get a receiver, right? So right now, look at the San Francisco 49ers. We just talked about San Francisco 49ers, and Brandon Ayuk won't he want Tyreek Hill money, right? He want Devontae Adams money. Those guys getting paid over $30 million a year, right? Tight ends not even getting paid over 20 right now. But Kyle Pitts can be just as dynamic as one of those guys, right? Look at Travis Kelce, what he's been able to do. So, drafting a running back, right? Running backs right now making $12 million a year. You get a Bijan Robinson and it pans out, he's really, really good. You can get a Bijan Robinson for cheaper on the cap. Got a great talent. So positions, in my opinion, it matters. It doesn't matter. And this is just my opinion. I know I'm not in the draft rooms like most of us think we are. We think we're, you know, internet GMs and things like that, and we figure we know what the team's thinking about and what they're going to do. In my opinion, when I look at it, I'm looking at it from that standpoint where you get a Kyle Pitts. That's why I believe the Atlanta Falcons can pay all these guys, because you got a tight end, who's going to pick up his 10-year option, but it's not going to be to that 20 million, to that 30 million like a receiver. But if he pans out to be a great tight end, right? You paying him tight end, you paying him in the tight end market, not the receiver market. Running back, it's how unfair it is to those guys that should be getting paid more, but you're still paying a running back at a running back market, right? Now Drake London is a whole different story. If Drake London turns out to be dynamic as we think he's going to be, then you're going up to that Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams money. That's what Brandon Ayuk's trying to get right now. That's what Stephon Diggs wanted. I mean, think about it. Those top receivers, yes, they're getting paid $29, $30 million right now. Go look at their contracts. That's where tight ends money is going. Defensive pass rushers, right? Danielle Hunter just got 24, 25 million, right? Josh Allen just got all that money. These guys are getting paid. So positions matters in draft, right? And the higher you get these guys at positions, the more you're going to end up paying them in the long run. So if you go look at what the Los Angeles Rams did last year, when they got Kobe Turner and the draft picks that they got later on in the draft, and those guys turned to be really good beside Aaron Donald, right? They got those guys for 3 more years at third round pay in the draft class, right? That's how you look at a draft strategy. You start talking about positions. Start about looking at positions. You start looking at the cap. That's how they start to build a team, right? So the Rams was able to take young talent, and it takes coaching, right? So you got to have a good coaching staff to be able to get these guys to their potentials. That's why I say it always depends on where the players go, what situation they're put in. Are they going to have opportunities to grow, right? But the Los Angeles Rams draft these guys, put them beside all pro like Aaron Donald, and lo and behold, that young defense that the Los Angeles Rams drafted last year had those guys in the playoffs and was this close for beating the Detroit Lions, who was in the NFC Championship game. So that's what I'm talking about. You really like what they was able to do last year. Then, like I said, that's why you kind of look around different teams and look at how they build their teams and their strategies and things like that. The Los Angeles Rams went all in, won the Super Bowl, realized they had to change the strategies. They drafted late in the round good scouting department, was able to get young talent, coached them up, and was able to be successful. They had players at positions where they could still have that leadership. They had Aaron Donald, they had a Matthew Stafford, right? They had a Cooper Cup, right? So they still had veterans on the team, but they was able to put young pieces around those guys and get it done. Um, Three Dirty said Kurt will showcase all the receiver skills if given time, and they're doing their jobs, including the running backs. I agree with that. I agree with that. All right, guys. The last two things I'm gonna talk about is the whole debate on need versus best player available. Right. So Terry Fontenot has went on record and saying that he always goes best player available. Right. It's what he says. Right. And it kind of shows when you look at the draft over the last three drafts that we had. Right. So looking at the board, um, And, and when we say best player available, it's their board, right? Because everybody got different boards. So it's the board that they looking at and what they determine is best player available, right? So when they went to the 21 draft, Kyle Pitts, in their opinion, was best player available, right? Now we know Michael Parsons went number 10 to the Dallas Cowboys. Um, Maybe he was the best player available, right? A lot of people thought they was going to go Justin Fields, right? We don't know. Justin Fields went to a situation where maybe, you know, if he went to Atlanta, it could have been totally different. Like I said, it always determines where the players go and how their career trajectory is going to take them and things like that. Justin Fields first couple of seasons was pretty rough. No offensive line, no offensive weapons. He struggled, right? 3 years later, 10 wins. Right. I mean that's where Justin Fields at right now. Um, but they decided to take Kyle Pitts. That's where they went. They felt like they were the best player available. We go to the next season, right? Everybody thought they was taking a pass rusher. Most people thought, like I said, if you're looking at the chalk, a lot of people had the Atlanta Falcons taking a pass rusher. They took Drake London, not Garrett Wilson. A lot of people thought they was going to take Garrett Wilson. Smith, like Drake London, more than Garrett Wilson, right? Time to be determined. It's too early to decide, how that draft went. We know Garrett Wilson is a good receiver, right? We're gonna see how that draft pays off down the road. It's too early right now. They can get a great at the time. Atlanta Falcons didn't need a receiver. Calvin Ridley was suspended for a year on all they had with Kyle Pitts, so they had to get a receiver. A lot of people thought they were going Garrett Wilson, though. They decided to go to Drake London, right? Arch Smith, like his bigger body receivers, that's what he went with. So we'll see how it pan out. This past draft, right? Everybody thought, even myself, we was going Jalen Carter, right? We was going Jalen Carter. We decided to go Bijan Robinson. Now, the Atlanta Falcons brought in David Omiyata, right? Who's a proven, great defensive tackle to put beside Grady Jarrett. And I felt like they really panned out for us with a David Omiyata. But getting a young Jalen Carter, who a lot of people thought was going to have a lot of all pros himself, was really, really, the direction they should have went in. But character, whatever they felt by Jalen Carter, they didn't feel comfortable drafting him. The best player on their board last year was Bijan, right? That's who they decided to go get. Time will tell if they made a mistake or whatever. We're going to find out about that, right? They went best player available. Come to this season, right? And most people have those three receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Roma Dunze as a top 10 pick, right? Now the Falcons once again at number 8. once again at number 8, one of those receivers probably going to be on the board. What would the Atlanta Falcons decide to do this year? Now, we just talked about those 3 pass rushers, Jared Verse, Leatu Latu, and Dallas Turner, right? We just talked about those guys. Where do they fall on Atlanta Falcons board? Where do those 3 receivers fall on their board? Where do a guy like Brock Bowers fall on their board? What do a guy like Joe Alt? What about the cornerbacks? The 3 cornerbacks that's out there. Terry Arnold, Quinn Mitchell, right? What about Quinnion Mitchell? What about those guys? Cooper DeJean. All 3 of those cornerbacks could go, in the top 10 as well. Depends on what Atlanta Falcons got. Now, we just talked about need, right? Need is a cornerback. Need is a pass rusher. Receiver is not a need. It's a nice to have. You can put another dynamic, receiver out there with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Darnell Mooney, and give Kirk Cousins all the weapons. You can do that, right? And I wouldn't be mad with that. I'm just going to say it. That'll be something to behold, right? But right, they need a pass rusher. Now, Atlanta Falcons had 42 sacks last year. We know that they had 42 sacks. That's a big jump from what they had the year prior, 21 sacks. So they doubled their sack numbers. Remember, not one guy had over double-digit sacks. Matter of fact, the highest sacks total we had for the team for one individual was 6.5, and that was by Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree, who's no longer with the team right now so far. So we have to consider, do Terry Fontenot decide to go against the grain and go need over best player available? What decision they're going to do this year? It's going to be exciting. Now, in my opinion, the best thing for them to do is to move back in the draft. They move back in the draft. Somebody else might want to come up and get one of those talented receivers. You get draft capital, and now a guy that you needed is lower. It falls where you had him at on your board, vice reaching for him, right? Because maybe they don't have Dallas Turner, Leatu Latu, and Jared Verse a top 10 pick on their board. And if they don't have one of those guys a top 10 pick on their board, they probably shouldn't grab them, even though it's a need. So you're reaching. I think when teams reach for needs, and it wouldn't be a huge reach because I'm pretty sure they probably got those guys around top 15, right? So it wouldn't be like they're getting a guy, that they had in a second round grade on, they pick him in the first round. So it's not like that. But at the same time, if you got a guy that you got graded a lot higher than one of those guys, what decision should they make? That's the question. That's the question. Now, for me, I think Atlanta Falcons got a defensive head coach. I think they should go defense this year. Be the first year under Terry Fontenot, break the trend. Once again, like I said, I would love to have one of those talented receivers there. However, I think it's not a big jump between a Jared Verse, and his ceiling to what a Rome Doomsday can bring you. And I could be totally wrong. And we look at this 5 years from now, and Rome Odunze, his trajectory is going to be a Hall of Famer, and Dallas Turner is just another guy, another pass rusher that Atlanta Falcons drafted, because we know the Atlanta Falcons track record of drafting pass rusher is really terrible. So 330 says, he says, your thoughts on the Penix workout for the Falcon. What does that mean to you? So I talked about this the other day, and I talked about it real briefly. I kind of think it's a smoke and mirrors, man. Now, if he falls to the second round, maybe the Atlanta Falcons decide to draft Michael Penix Jr. Obviously, sending that big contingents up there. They like what they seen out of him, but um, unless he fall to the second round, or maybe the Atlanta Falcons. So this could be a draft strategy that they might utilize. They actually move back a little in the draft, like I said, within the top 15, right? Get their pass rusher, and then decide to move back in the first round, late first round, and draft for Michael Penix Jr. late in the first round, so they can get that 5 years, you know, um, to let him sit for a minute, right? A lot of people, kind of looking at that because he's already a 24-year-old. So if he do sit for 2 years, by the time he get on the field, be 26, right? I mean, they're still young. It's not like he's gonna be in 30s or anything like that. But I think the Atlanta Falcons just doing their due diligence, should they like they should. You should look at every prospect, make a determination. But in my opinion, the Atlanta Falcons drafting at quarterback at number 8 would be a waste, in my opinion, because we already know you just paid, you know, a $90 million guaranteed contract to your quarterback for 2 seasons at least, and you're going to draft your quarterback in the top 10. I just think that'd be a waste. So I don't see them doing that. I don't see them going that route and drafting a Michael Penix Jr. at number 8. However, I can see them moving back up. Just say, like I said, they fall back, um, a little bit in the draft in the top 15, still get their pass rusher, and then they got another day 2 pick that they can actually move back up later in the first round and draft for Michael Penix. I can see that because then they would get the 5-year option. And if you look at what the Green Bay Packers was able to do, remember they drafted Jordan Love in the first round, right? He sat for almost 3.5 years before he actually got his opportunity. That's where you can see something like a situation like that, right? And because it's a precedent set out there, we've seen it. Jordan Love sat, Aaron Rodgers sat, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre. So it's a precedent out there that you can see where a guy like Michael Penix sit. But honestly, I don't think Michael Penix will be there. I think Michael Penix is going to get snatched off the board maybe earlier than we think because of the quarterback needy teams. So that's my opinion on it. I really believe that they're trying to put smoke out there to let teams know if you want to move up to 8 and draft a quarterback, because we interested in him too. And maybe a team like the Minnesota Vikings, like the Denver Broncos, will bite on it. The Las Vegas Raiders came out and said that they're not, looking for a quarterback. But teams they say everything before the draft, right? To throw teams off, so we don't know what's true and what's not true. But one of those 3 teams will come up and get a quarterback. So we just have to see. Um, I said that the video smoke and mirrors setting up a trade back. Yeah, hopefully that's what they're trying to do. But if not, I always said you go to get this Kirk Cousins, 36 years old. You need a succession plan. So, I wouldn't mind if they did get a backup quarterback. A lot of people got them maybe going to get the quarterback out of South Carolina. I mean, to me, it's like just going to get another Desmond Ritter. So I don't know about that. Um, I kind of like Travis out of Florida State, right? For a developmental guy, you get him later in the round. Coming off the injury, Jordan Travis, I kind of like him. Go get him. Maybe. Eddie said not happening. I agree. I don't think it's happening either. I don't think it's happening. Like I said, I think it's smoke and mirrors. I mean, I know they send a lot of people up there to Washington to look at to have a private workout with him, but I just believe it's smoke and mirrors, man. I just can't see Michael Penix going to I can't see that going. And you said Jordan Travis, yes, that makes sense to me. Again, Jordan Travis, I thought he did pretty good in college. Coming off an injury, perfect guy to sit behind a Kirk Cousins. to learn. He won't be rushed, right? Um, I mean, it could be the next Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson, right? You grab one of those guys, let them sit. You know, those guys had to play right away. We know, Russell Wilson. They brought in Matt Flynn. He kind of won the joint over him. Tony Romo got hurt. Dak Prescott got put right in the fire. But you know, Tom Brady got in because of injury, right? And I'm not saying Jordan Travis is going to be Tom Brady. Just saying, you pick a guy late in the round, they sit back and learn from a pro like a Kirk Cousins over years. Maybe you can get something done, right? So I'm really interested to see by need versus best player available this year. We'll see what they decide to do. I'm really interested about that. And guys, the last point I'm gonna make when we talk about draft strategies is something that the Atlanta Falcons have done well in the Terry Fontenot um regime so far, and that is bringing in undrafted free agents, right? And you can kind of look at this as round 8 now, right? Because the practice squad has grown. Right now, they can have 53 plus the 16 practice squad players. Kind of help get undrafted guys, bring them in, develop. All right, you look at a guy like Nate Landman, right? Who had 110 tackles for the Atlanta Falcons. He was undrafted. A guy that had over 400 tackles at the University of Colorado, but took an injury, right? So didn't get drafted. The Atlanta Falcons decided to bring him in. And now probably, Sir Planet Troy Anderson, a guy that we took, in the second round 2 seasons ago because of injury, and Troy Anderson might can't get back on the field because Nate Landman played so well, right? And they just brought Nate Landman back, got him, for a great deal, about a 1.5 mil, right? And he might be our starting linebacker because the way he played. You look at a guy like D. Alford, right? Not necessarily coming from undrafted, but he came from the CFL, right? A guy that didn't get drafted in the NFL, came from the CFL, was our starting nickel cornerback the last couple of seasons. So they have really, really did a great job bringing in undrafted guys, putting them into the developmental program, and those guys coming in and actually playing really well for the Atlanta Falcons. What's up, Brian Peoples? So I love the fact that the Atlanta Falcons really get right on it, right after the draft. The good thing about this year, right? They don't have a 6 and 7 round pick, right? So right after their last pick, right, they can go ahead and start the contact guys that they think might not get drafted, that they're really high on, right, and start to make calls and put those deals in, because that's why you start to see guys signing like right after the draft, because they already on the phone with their agents and things like that, trying to bring them in to add them to that 90-man roster for training camp, right? So but we have did a great job bringing in undrafted free agents. That has to, my opinion, with the addition to the practice squad, moving the 16 players. I think that has to be part of the draft strategy now. Another thing that need to be part of the draft strategy is the hybrid kickoff, especially if it decides to stay. Right, we know it's going to be in effect this year, but the way players, the teams start to deploy players on that new kickoff rule, right? Do you get more athletic guys, you know, in the return game, or do you get more athletic guys? You put more athletic guys out there, you know, in the kick defense, right? Because you want to make sure you got guys can go down and make tackles, because once a guy get past that first line of defense, they got potentially to bust it wide open. So I think that's got to be part of the draft strategy as well for for this Atlanta Falcon team. But I like our front office staff. You got a former GM there, Ryan Pace, coming from the Chicago Bears. You look at some of the guys he drafted when he was there, or a guy like a Khalil Mack, right? And that's why we get a lot of Chicago Bear guys here, because he drafted Justin Fields, right? Ryan Pace drafted Justin Fields. So um, and Terry Fontenot decided not to draft Justin Fields. So, but Ryan Pace is we got Kyle Smith that came from the Washington football team. It's probably one of the best front office men out there, who's probably going to end up leaving the Atlanta Falcons pretty soon and get him a front office position somewhere as a general manager. Um, Terry Fontenot himself, you know, been with Mickey Loomis from the New Orleans Aints for so many years, really know how to run a front office, especially from a pro standpoint, bringing in pro scouts and things like that. So I like the Atlanta Falcons front office that they have assembled. Um, their staff is really good in finding pros, right? Gyms that guys come in and contribute. The way they was able to go get a guy like Contavious Street last season to fill in for Grady Jarrett, who only played in 5 games, but really made himself some money, and they decided to bring him back this year. So I love the way this front office is set up. It's no perfect draft strategy, guys. Let's just go ahead and throw that out. It's no perfect draft strategy. Um, it's a science to it. It's definitely a science. Um, you have to look at the traits. You got to look at the abilities of these guys. Um, we just got to think about the misses the Atlanta Falcons had. Atlanta Falcons drafted Tat McKinley over J.J. Watt, right? They needed a pass rusher. J.J. Watt was still on the board. They drafted Tat McKinley, right? We just talked about it. They drafted Kyle Pitts over Michael Parsons. We don't know, right? Who's going to be the better pro? We'll find out. Michael Parsons right now is in the lead in that, right? It's like he's had a better career so far than Kyle Pitts. But Kyle Pitts get a chance to show his worth this year. Finally got a quarterback getting the ball. We know his first season he went to the Pro Bowl, right? With Matt Ryan was here, so he showed that potential. But the last couple of seasons, one with injury, then playing with 4 different other quarterbacks during that time, has not paid dividends for him, right? So it's no perfect draft strategy. Guys go to teams sometimes it don't work out for them. We started the show talking about Atlanta Falcons only got 3 Hall of Famers. We drafted Brett Favre, right? He goes to Green Bay and you know go to the Super Bowl, win multiple MVPs, right? One of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game, right? We drafted Deion Sanders, in my opinion, probably one of the best athletes to ever play, sports period. And we let him go. We decided not to give him a contract, right? He ended up being a hard gun, for teams because he was so good, right? But Atlanta Falcons, time will tell with other guys, right? I still believe Jesse Tucker should be a Hall of Famer. Just do. The Hammer Man was amazing, but they still ain't gave me his due. I believe Julio is going to be in the Hall of Fame. I believe Matt Ryan is going to be in the Hall of Fame. Of course, Michael Vick, if he wouldn't have had the things that happened to him during his career, I think Michael Vick wouldn't end up. So Atlanta Falcons have drafted good players, right? We look at a guy like Roddy White, they drafted him. Now you look at some of our new players who drafted the Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett been all pro, right? Chris Lindstrom been all pro the last 2 seasons. And those are recent guys, right? But we'll just have to see what happens this year with this draft strategy. So far, so good. I love what the decisions Terry Fontenot has made. Now you have a new coaching staff. The expectations for the Atlanta Falcons team is totally different than it would been the last 3 seasons. Last year it was pretty high, but it's probably even higher this year. They already been picked to win the division. They went out and got a quarterback, so that cannot be an excuse this year for not having good quarterback play. So now they got to put it all out there, but it starts in 2 weeks. We're trying to finish out this roster, um, filling in some of the holes that we got on this roster that needs to be filled, and that's where I like to see what kind of strategy that the Atlanta Falcons going to use. Guys, I talked a lot and I talked about a lot of stuff. Definitely want to hear you guys' comments and what you think about the Atlanta Falcons draft strategies. The you know the teams that you think has really knocked it out the park. From a drafting standpoint. I mean, you go to other leagues. You look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? And Sam Presti probably one of the best, you know, eye for talent that's out there, right? I mean, think about it. He had Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. He drafted um, so many guys, that he has drafted. He's really good, got an eye for talent. And some guys just can do that, man. They really can find pieces. That I think Ozzie Newsome for the Baltimore Ravens is that type of guy, right? But his motto is best player available. And sometimes if you use that mantra, you're usually going to get a good football player, right? Because you go best player available, 9 times out of 10, you're getting a good football player, right? You're not reaching for needs. Yeah, we need this, but we really don't need this position, but we're going to draft it anyway, right? And then let the chips fall where they may. That's maybe be the best strategy. That might be the key. That might be the formula to being, drafting good draft classes is just pick the best player on the board and roll with it. So we'll just have to see what the Atlanta Falcons decide to do this time. I can't wait. We got 14 days away. Been talking a lot about the draft. Um, and maybe they just go chalk guys and number 8 pick Dallas Turner. And I don't think many people will be upset with that pick if they decide to go that route. Right. So guys, that's all I have today. Thank you guys for tuning in to this long talk about draft. Give me your thoughts on what would be your draft strategy for Atlanta Falcons. Um, Three Dirty mentioned moving back in the draft, right? People mention quarterback, people mention receivers. Do they go cornerback? Do they surprise all of us and go Joe Alt, right? Um, Even though we don't need a tackle, but could be the best player on the board at the time. We just don't know, right? So that's where we're at, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. This is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. Peace.